Hello, this is Mr. Amberman, and today we're here to discuss a very significant agricultural model. Now, remember, when we talked about models, we're talking about things that are perfect, just like this person, Johann Heinrich von Thunen. Yes, he's a model from the 1850s. No, just kidding. As you can tell from the picture, the guy named Johann Heinrich von Thunen, the namesake of this model, came from Germany quite a while ago. And his theory, his model, he's basically trying to digest and discuss, why do certain farmers farm where they do in relation to a city. And so his model was known as the von Thunen model, the von Thunen rings, however you want to say it. And he said there were three variables. And if you go down to the bottom of your page, right down here, you go down to the bottom of this page right here, and it says, let's get back to the nitty gritty here. It says that there are three things that we need to discuss here. Number one, land rent. How much does your land cost? Two, how much can you get for your product? And three, what are the transportation costs? Okay, those are three big ideas that are going to come back. And he said that there's always these constants. A constant is something like, you always know, hopefully the sun's going to rise every day. A constant is you always know that, there's always going to be the neighbor's dog barking at a certain time every night when its master takes it out for a walk. In the von Thunen model, there are four constants. Number one, a centrally located market town. Number two, an isotropic plain. Now you say, what the bleep's a isotropic plain? Well, an isotropic plain simply means there's no interruptions between the city and the farmer. There's no rivers, mountains, streams, etc. between the farmer and the city or the market. Farmers are very rational decision makers. They're always going to make the best decisions, and farmers are going to be able to transport goods directly to the market. So there's no middleman. So the farmer gets all the profit for his crop. And the idea of distance decay also takes some effect here. So if you look at the highlighted word distance decay, the further away you get, there is a lessening of the price of land. And, so you're going to have to be really close to the city. If you're going to have something that's close to the city, you're going to need to make sure that you can make a lot of money on it, because that land rent close to the city is much higher than the land further you get away from the city. So you have very specific rings or zones of production here, and it's pretty simple, and I'm going to explain it to you right now. So on the left-hand side here, you see what's called the isolated state. That is the perfect. That's the model, just like the hotness of von Thunen. On the right-hand side here, you have what's in reality, but we're going to focus on taking a look at the perfect thing, the thing on the left. And if you see that yellow dot in the middle, that is your central city, and then you have on the right-hand side, you have the navigable river. But we're going to be focusing on the left-hand side here. You have the yellow dot in the middle, which is the central city, and then the first ring is milk production and market gardening. The reason that's milk production and market gardening is because you can do that type of agriculture on very minimal land. And, the market gardening would be flowers, greenhouses, the types of plants and vegetables and fruits that you can grow in a very small space. So if you don't need a lot of space and you can get a lot of money for your product, then you may be able to afford to be closer to the city. As you move a little further away from the city, you see the darker green, that's firewood and lumber production. And the reason that firewood and lumber production is that close to the city is simply due to the idea of how much money it's going to take to transport the goods. So wood is heavy. So when you cut down trees and you need to get it to the market, you can't go from the furthest ring away, because all of your profit would be eaten up by your transportation costs. So you need to be fairly close to the city so you can transport your goods to the city and still make some profit. As you get further and further away, you see crop farming without fallow and crop farming, fallow and pasture. Fallow means that you simply let stuff grow there and die. It actually re-energizes the land with nutrients. And so the closer you get to the city, the more expensive the land is, and you can't afford to allow your land to go to waste in terms of just letting something grow and die there. And so when you get to the without fallow, that's closer to the city. With fallow and pasture means you can just have your livestock grazing. That's when you can afford to do that a little further away. The 3-field system is just your crop rotation. In our area, it would be corn, soybeans, wheat, and then your livestock ranching would be the very last. And for each of those successive rings, the land is less and less expensive because the farmers who farm that particular crop need more and more land. Here's another way of looking at it, a much simpler way. The city is the red dot in the center. Number 2, the intensive agriculture would be your market gardening and fruit. You have your lumber and your forest resources in ring number 3, your grain farming in ring number 4, and your livestock ranching in number 5. And each successive ring, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the land gets cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. Here's another way of looking at it, a black and white version. You have the central city, the dot in the middle. Your horticulture and dairying is the same thing as market gardening and fruit. It's just a different way of saying it. Commercial woodland, again, your lumber, again, transportation costs are key here. Intensive arable means you got to really use that land hard simply because the land's so expensive. Extensive arable means it's farmable, but we can allow some of our land to be used as pasture. We can use some of our land to be fallow in terms of let it grow and die to give some nutrients to that land. And obviously your livestock ranching being the last one. This is a textbook example. On the right-hand side, you have reality. On the left-hand side, you actually have another way of looking at it. You have your city as the black dot, and we're going to look at the one on the left here. The black dot in the middle is your city. The darker greenish ring is your horticulture and dairying, your market gardening and fruit. Your forestry being your lighter green, your kind of khaki green. Then you have your crop and pasture for your alternate use. So that's where it's a little more intensive, and you get out to your crop rotation. You get out to that area, and then the grazing. That's where your livestock is. And those folks need the most land. I mean, if you think about the United States, the northeastern United States is the milk shed. That's where most of your milk is produced, and it's in relatively close distance to a lot of your major urban areas. This is the one I would want you to know for any kind of quiz or any kind of test that we have, because it's very simplistic. You have the city, that's the center. And then the darker blue is the dairy and market gardening, the forestry in your second ring, your grains and other crops in your third ring, and then your fourth ring is ranching. If you know this particular one, you can hit pause, take a screenshot, whatever you need to do. This is the one I want you to kind of put in your mind. The reason that it's a model is because it's perfect. This doesn't exist in reality. The closest thing I can give you kind of as an example is York. If you think of York as the center, the red dot, the original Rudders, you can actually pass the original Rudders. If you go north George Street, or if you're on 83 North, you pass the Rudders facility. It had to be close to the city. If you think of Perrydale, it had to be close to the city. Why? Because their product spoils. Their product is labor intensive. Their product, they can get away with less land than livestock ranching, which is a lot different than, cattle in terms of dairy production. You can get away with a little less land. If you think about the forestry, think of Spring Grove. Spring Grove would often, be a lumber production facility, and back in its original days. And so they needed to be close to the biggest market around, which was York. And so they needed to be relatively close. And you think the further away you get from a city, the more and more land's used for farming, because A, the land's less expensive the further away you get from an urban area, and B, the farmers who grow a lot of crops or have a lot of livestock, they need land, and they can't afford the most expensive land, so they have to go where the cheapest land is. You get out to the western United States, and you notice that ranching is the primary source of agriculture out that direction. It's drier, it's more conducive to livestock, and it's a lot less expensive than it is around here. You get to the Midwest, that's where you have your grains and other crops, your forestry, wherever there's a massive amount of forests. And so New York and Pennsylvania have some massive forest lumber industry, but the Pacific Northwest is really where it's at. So the von Thunen model is simply that, a model. It doesn't exist in reality in the present day, simply because we have refrigerated trucking, we have refrigerated transportation. Those are reasons that von Thunen is not as prevalent today. But if you look at cities, you can definitely see the scarring or the imprint of von Thunen. So if you have any questions, you know where to find me. And as always, have a great day.